I mentioned Incest Watch. Just doing the math at the end of this episode, Daemon's wife and Rhaenyra's kind of husband are both gone now. They're both lonely and free, and Rhaenyra is in semi-exile going to Dragonstone. Mm-hmm. She and Daemon gonna hook up and fuse their half families
possibly,
now?
but her actual husband is still alive. So,
but this is the thing. I was doing the math on this. Daemon has some real Targaryen Valyrian kids, and Rhaenyra needs some.
That's
or
true.
Alicent's gonna win this civil war. So if they marry and sync up and she kind of adopts the kids, then she's got legitimate heirs to offset whatever Alicent tries to throw at her.
So what do we do with Laenor?
Who cares?
Where does he go?
Yeah, honestly, who gives a shit?
he's kind of he's not really a factor anymore.
No, I know. I'm just saying, how does she conveniently get rid of him?
Yeah, and it also relies on that sort of mustache twirling instinct from Daemon. And what we see in this episode is life humbling Daemon.
Yeah.
We've got his wife's death, arguably suicide, and the death of his unborn child.
Yeah.
But he's also, if this is a 10-year jump, this guy's been out of power for years, away from the game, the influence, the king, and Rhaenyra. When we meet him again, he's reading and brooding, but there's no attitude. There's no Tyrion, there's no quipping. It's a new kind of impotence for Daemon. So do we think he still has it in him to be the Daemon we know and love with Rhaenyra at Dragonstone plotting a coup?
Yes, because the last scene before Laena goes into labor is them arguing and her saying you're better than this. And him kind of realizing you can see him reconsidering maybe we should leave Pentos and try to make something of ourselves and not just sit here and be on the sidelines. So I definitely think he's gonna come back to himself.
And she also reminds him that she knew that she was only second fiddle to Rhaenyra. And the only reason, the absolute only reason that he didn't continue pursuing Rhaenyra, and perhaps the reason that he put himself into exile, is because she was married off to somebody else.
Right, so he couldn't do it.
So arguably, Daemon's feelings for Rhaenyra are maybe why he ends up in Pentos, because he knows that now that she's been married off, it's even further forbidden fruit, that he can't go in there and step foot in that, because that would really create more problems for the crown and Viserys, and just generally, there's a lot of heat there at this point, now that everyone has seen her be married off.
Yeah.
In hindsight, Rhaenyra went off and slept with somebody else and fathered his children anyway, and maybe it would have been safer for her to do that with Daemon, because then they would have looked like Targaryens at least, to avoid the suspicion.
That's true.
But there's that now.
So is that the Game of Thrones rule? If you want to cheat on your husband, then you
keep it in the family.
Yeah, you have it with someone who looks like you, so there's no suspicion.
Get this, at least get the same colored hair as your husband.
Got it.
Because there are a couple directions here that Daemon can go. He can either lock down the Rhaenyra thing and hide out at Dragonstone. He could just abandon his children and run off on a dragon and go back to war with the Stepstones, now that we know that they're rebelling again. Or he can go back to King's Landing. And this is sort of the question, because Daemon at the end of this episode is almost in the same position that we find Viserys at the beginning of the season, where he's lost the wife and the kid, and he's sort of at his most humbled. So if he's been in exile from his brother, and we've seen how many times has Daemon been exiled, and then Viserys drags him back because he needs a familiar face, they could commiserate over this. And Viserys has no friends at court anymore. So do we see Daemon going back to King's Landing?
I think once he finds out that Rhaenyra has gone to Dragonstone, he's going to go there. I think that's what's going to happen.
I feel like that's a high probability. However, we now find our king, who has very, very rapidly come to be very, similarly impotent.
I mean, it's not that rapid. It was
Daemon.
10 years, but yeah.
Well, I mean, in the span of the episodes that we've seen, right? From last episode to this one, he has lost a lot of his power, and de facto, we've got Alicent running things. So the only sort of manifestation of Viserys' agency is his choice in hand. And you see...
so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Yikes.
Wait,
I didn't say hands.
Did you guys
There was no
see?
S.
There's a moment when he's holding... I noticed this... I rewatched some scenes, but I noticed this the first time watching. When he's holding the baby, his arm that's not supposed to be there, you see the little fingers waggling, trying to hold on to the baby. Like, you can see his non-existent hand, like, underneath his clothes.
Oh, whatever. Okay.
I was like, that hand's not supposed to be there. Anyway, it made me giggle.
Look at
It's
the dragon.
phantom. It's called phantom limb, Maggie. Come on, suspend your disbelief.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'm sorry.
So
What were you saying?
It was just so funny to me.
So what I'm getting at with that point, though, is that we've seen that really the only agency that he has right now as king is, we see him at the council meetings, but by and large, you've got Rhaenyra versus Alicent and those, and the other the other council members are just shown to be stupid. It's just folly to hear what they say. One guy's like super old and they don't know what the hell he can't hear, and so the only sort of manifestation of Viserys' power right now is his hand, Lionel, strong. But now that we see that he's gone, there is a void that Viserys can actually try to fill on his own.
You think with Daemon?
Everyone is, Alicent at least wants to point to her father as the prime option to come back and be hand again. But now that Daemon isn't otherwise occupied with, all of his wives are dead.
And they have this shared trauma.
And they now have this shared trauma. Daemon is, to Cam's point, now that they're basically in the same, Daemon finds himself in the same position that Viserys was in episode 1. Maybe Daemon goes to Viserys to sort of commiserate, and through that they find that maybe Daemon has aged a little bit. He's matured a little bit.
Right.
And Viserys wants somebody who he can firmly call his own, not a hand that he cast out 10 years prior,
right,
perhaps.
who he doesn't trust.
And
that would be fun.
We don't know what Otto's been doing in the last 10 years. But he hasn't been working for the king.
Right. The other thing about, like, I don't know if Daemon and Rhaenyra could get together right away is, if they're going to do that, you have to do away with Laenor somehow. If Corlys and Rhaenys, the parents of Laenor and Laena, if both of those kids die, they're like, what did they have in common? Oh, they were both married to Targaryens. Like, they're gonna do something, and that's gonna cause problems, and they probably can't afford to do that.
But we know Corlys had an alliance with Daemon at one point, so maybe Daemon being hand
if
pulls
he kills
the
their
Valyrians
children,
back
then
in.
perhaps not.
Well, then you have to make it look like he didn't kill him.
Yeah, I'm just saying that might be difficult.
But he was lusting for war in this episode. Throw him
Yes,
off to war and let him die there.
Exactly. And I feel like that is the easy route to write him off, because it's clear that he's not set up to do something, or at least at this point in time, it doesn't look like Laenor is set up to do something super important. He's just sort of like doing his thing and enjoying, reaping the benefits that were supposed to belong to both Rhaenyra and he.